We're building a 1960s inspired supercar, but what is a 1960s supercar? Details matter: headlights, chrome, 2 seats, well, maybe someday. A raw driving experience, no traction control, no nannies, powerful mid-mounted engine, analog. And the shape of the body needs to be sleek and aggressive. But like every great car, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I'm confident in our vision, design, and skills, but we have a lot of parts to go.
You'll take my life, but I'll take yours too. You fire musket, but I'll run you through. So when you're waiting for the next attack, you better stand, there's no turning back.
We have our pop-up headlight proof of concept. It works. It's also half made out of tape. So the goal is to get this surround made out of aluminum, welded in all nice and pretty. I'd really like to go from this mock-up 3D printed jig to the prototype of the final product, which would be articulating and powered under its own power with some linear actuators.
While Ryan's working on the headlights, I'm gonna move on past arts and crafts and start doing some tubing on this car so we can actually get some sheet metal on the back end of this thing. I've got some really good ideas right now, and I don't want the government getting a hold of them.
So you're gonna put it on the internet so everyone can see it anyway? So last week I got the tape pattern figured out for our scallop the whole way around. You'll notice that the scallop is all set towards the inside of the car, which kind of balances it between the lines here. Everything's copacetic. You open, when the light's on, it pops up like this. It's gonna be level to the road. We'll be able to put a projector in there and adjust that as we need. The bottom part here is a little bit obscured, but it doesn't matter because it does not affect any of the actual lights that matter in the headlight. So the next step is to remove our pattern here and turn it into aluminum, which is gonna be a bit of a challenge because it looks pretty simple. It's just like, oh, I'll just cut it out and push it around, but it's not that simple. So let's cut up our pattern here, lay it out on some aluminum, and see what we can come up with. There it is. I gotta flatten it. The reason I'm a little stressed about this is when you cut like any kind of sheet metal and it's really thin, especially if you're using a shear, it's really hard to cut and have it like deform. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is, rather than trying to do this all one piece and then put it in a slip roll and have a nice curve, which is possible, but a lot of room for error. Instead, I'm going to cut it down to like maybe 3 manageable chunks. Cut them out of this piece of scrap here, if I can fit them one here, and then shape them individually and tack them together. I think it's gonna be the better route. So you'll notice with my pattern I laid here, I laid it nice and flat and relaxed and traced it. But then I added an additional window around the panel. This is very important. I'm going to cut on the outside of this outer line the whole way around to give myself some wiggle room, because when you cut out a panel and you begin shaping it and everything else, things tend to walk a little bit. And if that walk happens, it's important to have enough material left over to be able to weld it or whatever else you need to do to save the panel. Because if you do all that and then you have a giant gap, you failed and you have to start all over again, and it's a lot harder to add material than it is to subtract it. So I'd rather have an oversized piece instead of ruining a piece and then having to add to it.
So the first step is I gotta get all this foil out of the way so that I can correct our other issue right here. Then we can get this all locked in place and finish what's forward. Even though this foil, you know, was mostly so we could visualize the concept, it's going to work very well to help us make patterns when we go to shape the aluminum sheet. So I'm gonna try and retain this as much as I can and just cut it off. We'll tape it back together. We'll have our pattern. So I'm working on the new shape for this piece of tubing to get from here to there more smoothly. The issue I'm running into is we centered this right on the wheel center line, which puts us right over top of our strut here. And so we're starting to run out of clearance. This tubing is a 1/2 inch or 12 millimeters. And if I shift it over this way, it's never gonna run into the strut, and we can put our body wherever we want without having to worry about it. So instead of having this nice little grid here, we're gonna do a little joggle here so that we have plenty of clearance and we can get our shape exactly what we want. Okay, so I was looking at it and I didn't want to have some weird convoluted thing, and I decided I didn't need this shape defined right here. So we're just gonna extend this tube right into here, and that's gonna look awesome and be a lot simpler. So here we go.
Time for the roller. So we're busting out the Eastwood slip roll again to turn this banana into a banana in that way as well. The challenge is a slip roll you use typically to just do a straight line and it can curve like a circle. This piece, however, is gonna be like a cone almost, where like the inner radius and the outer radius are different. So what I'm doing is I have this roller, the back roller set up, so the back roller is higher on this side and lower on that side. So in theory, it should push the panel a certain way to turn into a cone. Now I'm gonna eyeball this. So hopefully it can go from this flat piece here to actually fitting down and resting where it should be. So because I'm making the scallop in multiple pieces, if I were to make this piece also out of aluminum here and try to fit it, the overlap's gonna make it really annoying because there's just a lot of really tight fit tolerances the whole way throughout. So what I think I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna get the lower piece that I labeled A, the A piece, figured out where it's gonna sit. I'm gonna scribe it, I'm gonna cut it back, and we're gonna tack it in place so it's permanently fixed and trimmed back the way it should be, and then build off of that. That should help with the build-up of tolerances and make it a little less annoying to work with. There you go. Now we have our edge to grind away, and our headlight should articulate, and then we can go to the next one.
I got an edge to grind with you.
The internet knows that.
After I cut those pieces of tubing out of the clamshell, I'm going to need some new brackets to support it, so I'm going to make them out of this piece of flat stock. There we go. That was a nice cut. That's what happens when you have a
So the challenge is, right now, closed, it's this point to this point when it's closed. And then when it's open, it's from there to there, full extension. So the difference is about 28.5 millimeters. So that's what the stroke of this does. I need to figure out what 2 points on here will get us from open to closed to be the end point on both sides being the exact angle we need the headlight to be. So when it's closed, the headlight being like this, and then when it's open, the headlight being at full end of articulation up here. Because if it's too short, it's gonna be the wrong angle. And I don't wanna have this run, like have extra stroke afterwards, because the goal is to just run this to the stop. If we don't do that, we'd have to like eyeball it with switches inside the car or whatever, and I don't wanna do that at all. We need to make this automated. So it's math time, which I'm very good at math. I'm very bad at math. So what we did was we figured out that the headlight had 21 degrees of articulation. We drew that as a ray on here, and then we figured out that the linear actuator actuates 28.5 millimeters. So then we found between the 2 points, or the 2 lines and the 21 degrees, where 28.5 millimeters is. And that has to be equidistant from the center point. That was 79 millimeters. So then we went to the model, went off the pivot point, which is right here, went 79 millimeters out, drew an arc on that with some dots. And then anywhere we mount the linear actuator on this side, when it's inside that arc, as long as we are going across the pivot point and mount it on the body over there, we should, in theory, have cracked the math. And by we, I mean Tony, mostly.
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure this is theory. I feel like this is all proven, but yeah.
We're gonna prove it right now.
Yeah, it depends on how good we are at executing it.
Yep, so.
The theory is sound.
Now it's time to execute. All right, let's see if this thing works. Well, my math is a little off because it wants to go further than we wanted it to. But it does move. So now, reverse it, ready?
Yep.
So that's up the whole way.
Is that down all the way?
Yep, it's very close. Yeah. It's pretty close. And honestly, I can stand it a little bit further, so let's move it up a little bit.
Okay.
Because it's not quite the full way. This should be almost touching, like,
right.
Bottom down. It's not plain. Within reason, we're slightly off here, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Just gotta throw some screws into a wall and hope for the best, apparently, and something stuck, eventually. the goal here is to wire it so when you turn the car on, you kick the headlights on, we go bing, done. So our bench test is complete to this point. So now we're gonna go ahead and get this Cleco to the car in the place it's supposed to be. It means I'm gonna trim back some extra metal we don't need, get it to fit better. And then we're gonna see how it looks in the car, articulating up and down. It's exciting. myself. Look, I wired something right for once.
There we go. Actually,
shut up.
So I'm getting ready to cut out this section of tubing, and that obviously is supporting the clamshell in this area. So we're gonna have to have another support. I made them. They're gonna bolt on right here on the strut tower. So that tack didn't hold. I know it's a small difference, but it just feels so much better without that awkward piece in there. This line, everything, it just looks way better, and I feel way better about the product the way it looks now.
Headlights located on the car. It fits okay. We have, as you can tell, there's a big gap in the bottom. We're gonna be addressing that later, because right now we're happy that we have our scallop figured out, the design's figured out, the headlight articulates, if Tony can push the right button on this switch.
I didn't push it far enough.
So we're stoked with the direction, but we're gonna hop off these for a little bit, because there's a lot of behind the scenes work that needs to happen for the final product. The 3D printed blue structure behind the light right now is just for the test bed. It's not actually the final product, and it's gonna be completely re-engineered. We just have the pivot points now, which is the important part.
And the shape. So we've got the shape, the pivot points, the location, so we can move forward behind the scenes with some CAD work. We'll come back and show you everything that we did. And in the meantime, we're ready to start wireframing the middle section of the car. So we've got this mostly locked in. We're gonna get our hinge built at the back for the clamshell, and then we're going to start wireframing our shape so we can lock in the form for the doors.
We've been working really hard behind the scenes to try and find more time to work on Jigsaw. Jigsaw's our part-time gig, but something's changing there that's gonna allow us to continue working on this at a higher rate. And additionally, we have components on the way that'll make this thing one step above what it currently is.
Thanks for hanging out in the shop with us.
Why'd you touch me?
Was this meant to be? We went to run. The man who won the Russian gun.